Weekends are a good time to escape to the woods. Unless the weekend begins with Friday the 13th. Because 13 is an unlucky number. But out here, so are 1 through 12. Because these are Jason's woods. And nobody leaves them alive.
Okay, so I'm just talking for a moment so you can check the waveforms and see.
That sounds lovely. You sound so nice.
Good. You know, I sometimes sound nice. I'm very mean most of the time, so.
No, you're quite pleasant. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Podcast Part 3, the Part 3 podcast. I am Sam.
And I am Will.
It is Friday the 13th. So we are obviously going to talk about Friday the 13th, Part 3 in 3D.
Oh boy, does this movie want you to know it is in 3D.
Oh, right out of the gate, those credits, they come up at the screen, and then they come up a little bit more.
They come right at you.
And disco's back.
Oh yeah. Oh boy, they're so funky.
And I'm not going to pretend it doesn't slap completely. So yes, we watched Friday the 13th, Part 3. This is the one where Jason gets the hockey mask. This is the one that basically set the tone for the rest of the franchise.
And the funniest thing about the hockey mask, for me anyway, is like how unceremonious it is. Because how iconic Jason becomes with that hockey mask. It's just sort of a random thing that's lying around that he puts on.
Yeah, like when they did the reboot in 2009, like he finds the hockey mask, but there's like, they obviously have a big moment,
right?
And he pulls it on, and as he sees himself in the mirror, and it's just like, oh, he's now become his final form. And this, he just kind of walks on screen with it, and he's like, oh yeah, I've got it.
I've got a hockey mask. Yeah, it's just so funny. I mean, it's clear they didn't know that it was going to become the defining look for Jason.
Well, I mean, so in Part 2, Jason wears like a bag on his head. He wears like the flour sack, like the town that dreaded sundown's killer. And while I actually think that worked really well, it apparently was really hard to see because he only had one eye hole.
Oh, right.
And it was like sort of double-sided tape around his eye, around the actor's eye. And they decided they wanted something a little easier to work with, especially because they were doing all the prosthetics for his like big weird head.
Right.
Jason's got a big old melon. And so they started with like an actual Red Wings hockey mask, and then they like molded it and expanded it to fit over, like to be like flatter. Like there's no hockey mask in real life that looks like that. Most hockey masks like cover your actual skull. I think that's kind of the point.
Yeah, cover your entire head.
So I love the Friday the 13th movies. They're so dumb and they're so simple, and like they're born out of just sheer cash-in cinematic laziness. Sean Cunningham, who created the franchise, he had produced some films. He'd produced Last House on the Left with Wes Craven, and after Halloween comes out in 1978, he wants to kind of get in on that trend, and so he takes out a full-page ad in Variety announcing they're like looking for producers for Friday the 13th. The most terrifying film ever made, and he had no clue what it was going to be about when he did that. It's just you gotta admire the balls.
Yeah, that's pretty great. And yeah, I mean, I'm not as familiar with the franchise as you are. I think I've seen the original. I've seen Jason Goes to Hell, and up until seeing this one, and Jason X, and Freddy vs. Jason, and the remake. So.
All right, so you've seen probably like some of like one of the best and then all the worst ones.
Yeah, that's probably right.
But yeah, it started out as basically it was like a slasher whodunit set at a summer camp. No, set at a summer camp that has yet to open, so it's just like the 5 counselors that are there. Done super cheap. It was just a bunch of like New York actors, like Actors Equity people that did theater. Kevin Bacon among them in the original. It was a huge success. It's like as a movie, it's it's kind of dull. No, I don't think anyone goes and says that their favorite one is the first Friday the 13th.
Yeah, I mean it's got an interesting twist. That's kind of its big thing, and a really great final scare. That's like that's it's because I remember seeing that at a sleepover, and we were kind of making fun of the movie all through it up until that last moment where we all like jumped out of our skin.
Yeah, and it's got the hallmark of the franchise is just really creative, gory kills, and the original was Tom Savini, who had come off of Dawn of the Dead and made and did this. Like, he just kind of showed up. They talk about it in all the documentaries. He just like showed up with his buddy Tasso, and he had a pet chinchilla that would sit on his shoulder, and they would just come up with different ways to kill people.
Doesn't Kevin Bacon get a spear through his
he gets
his
like
chest, or an
arrow up from under the bed and up through his neck.
That's it. Yeah.
And there's like axe to the face. There's the decapitation at the end. When the franchise is at its best, it's just creative kills. Someone once said that there's not much difference between like slasher movies and porn. It's just, instead of sex, it's death.
Right.
The bare bones minimum of story to connect everything. So the Friday the 13th Part 1 was a big hit. They went straight to Friday the 13th Part 2. And they just decided, fuck it. Jason didn't drown. He's a grown-up now, and he lives in the woods, and he's going to kill some other summer camp counselors. And I love Friday the 13th Part 2. It's probably my favorite in the franchise. Mm-hmm. The lead girl, played by Amy Steele, is great. It's got one of the best, like, final girl sequences. Jason is, still feels menacing. And he's got his like little shack in the woods with his little shrine to his mother. There's something like, it feels very grounded compared to what came later.
Right.
And it's Steve Miner. It was his directorial debut. He directed this one, and then he would go on to direct Halloween H2O.
Oh.
And Lake Placid, among many others.
So...
And he did like House. He did Forever Young with Mel Gibson.
Oh, wow.
The one, yeah.
I remember seeing trailers for that movie when I was a lad.
Yeah, so, he had a big career, and he's, I think, he did a great job. It's like a really well-directed, like, low-budget slasher movie, and then if you were to watch this one right after, you wouldn't believe it was the same director, because this one looks like shit.
Yeah, I mean, and I have to imagine it's just all the 3D stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, and, like... It is so funny that this one starts with footage, I'm assuming, from Part 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it just kind of like, the stuff from Part 2 kind of just ends and then just moves on.
Well, it's you can tell where the footage ends,
right.
Because there's the shot of them, like, from Part 2, it's like the whole final sequence of Part 2. So you get to see like Amy Steele, and you get to see Baghead Jason, and you get to see him get like the machete into the shoulder.
Right.
And then that you see them. There's this moment that you see them kind of, the survivors staggering out of the cabin, and then it cuts to a shot of Jason's body on the ground, and he shifts to life and kind of crawls away. That's from the new footage.
Right.
And so suddenly it goes from like really well lit, nice depth of field, to just like it's jarringly bright
and flat,
and really flat. It's, so this came in the middle of one of Hollywood's many different 3D crazes. There was the one in the 50s with like Creature from the Black Lagoon and like William Castle stuff like 13 Ghosts. There's this, the 80s one, and then there was the 2000s one with Avatar and everything that came after that. And the 80s one it was just like any franchise that could get to 3 got the 3D moniker. Like, there's Jaws 3D, there's Amityville 3D, it's... but it also would always mean breathtakingly bad optical effects and shoving as much crap into the camera as you could. But that being said, I feel like this one is probably would have been the most fun to see in theaters in 3D, because I just picture, like, in the audience, the moment they, like, pass the joint right into camera, everyone was just going, woo!
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of that, and it's one of those that just doesn't make the transfer to home video because of all of that. You're just kind of like, this is annoying.
Yeah, it's hilarious in how blatant it is, and it clearly came at the expense of just about every other element of filmmaking in the film.
Yeah. I mean, the opening, the first kill that Jason does in this movie of the couple, like in the bait shop or whatever it is. They're running.
It's like a little grocery store,
Yeah.
and I've never noticed it until this time, but it's very train themed.
And the guy who's like constantly trying to feed his animals and his
eating all the groceries,
eating all the food, and the henpecked wife. What is this?
Well, that's sort of one of the things that this one introduced into the franchise is really unlikable characters that you're then excited to see get killed. So you have like the first two movies, like every movie had the prankster.
Right.
But like the prankster in the first movie isn't in it very much. He's the first one to get killed, and the prankster in the second one is kind of likable. And he actually survives. Like a bunch of characters go off to like a bar and leave, your core cast to get brutally murdered.
Right.
And so in this one, you have like the prankster and the filthy locals and the bikers.
Oh,
It's just introducing just pure cannon fodder for Jason.
Yeah, and I mean, for the most part, aside from like of the main characters, I kind of liked everybody except for Shelley and Rick. Those two guys are just big old pieces of shit.
Yeah, it's. I find the two, like, Rick's just a dick.
Right.
Chrissy?
I think it's Chris, but maybe it's...
Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Either way, it's Chris. She's the lead, and I'm just such a big fan of Ginny, played by Amy Steele from the second movie, that Chris just doesn't measure up to me. But much like Halloween H2O, this is a story of a character rising above their PTSD, their trauma of their past.
That's right. I mean, it is. It's like an elevated horror now. It's coming to terms with trauma.
Yeah, exactly. It's in like the longest, weirdest monologue that I'm sorry. Sexual misconduct is wildly out of character for Jason Voorhees. And that's what it's implied. So it's like she had a fight with her parents. She ran off into the woods. She runs into Jason.
Right.
And he attacks her. And she passes out. And then wakes up in her bed. And her parents won't talk about it. So it's not like she just survived getting killed. There's like a really weird implication there.
What's even weirder is the effect they do for that sequence with her like superimposed over it.
Yeah.
Like that is like did not work at all.
No.
And I don't even know if that worked in the theater.
No, I don't think I don't even think that was meant to be a 3D effect. I think that might have been more like to just kind of cover up Jason's face.
Oh,
because also his makeup in the flashbacks is different than his makeup that you see later on, like without his mask on, because they changed the designs. Or I think Stan Winston did a design at first, and then they went to something a little less severe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah, that's weird. And I mean, it also has the problem where like the script is so basic that basically all the characters either speak in small talk or exposition.
Like 2, I think, is a better film, and 4 is definitely like kind of like the most iconic of the early Jason movies. But this one is definitely like it's Friday the 13th distilled down to its purest form.
Yeah.
It is just dumb, horny people go to a cabin by the water and are murdered by a man in a mask.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the whole movie.
Yeah, there's no even like there's no point at all where any of them are like, why is this happening to us? Who is this person killing? It's just no. There's somebody killing them.
Apart from the footage from part 2, they don't even say the name Jason in this entire film.
Exactly.
It is just this is like stock. You could change the title of this movie, and if you just use the footage they shot, it could be anything.
Yeah, I mean, it almost feels like like they bought a movie and then tacked on chunks of it to make it a Friday the 13th movie.
If everyone was dubbed worse, you'd think it was like an Italian knockoff.
Right, exactly. But that all being said, I did sort of, there were the couple whose name I can't remember. The couple who are like they're the ones in the room with the hammock.
Oh yes. Andy and his girlfriend, played by Tracy Savage.
Yeah.
Who was involved in the OJ trial later on.
Oh.
Well, she was a reporter for local LA, like NBC4 Los Angeles, and she had to go on the stand to testify. I forget exactly why, but Judge Ito threatened her with jail time, but she wouldn't give up her confidential sources.
Oh my God.
Yeah, wow. So, good on her, but it's like, what a leap.
What a leap. I like those two as like a couple. They seemed like actually like genuine people, and I felt kind of bad when they died. I was like, I'm kind of bummed that these two are good.
And this is a thing like that a lot of these movies do, where it's like just because a couple is fucking, they have to get killed.
Right.
But like there's a couple like that in part 2. There's a couple like that in part 5. That off the top of my head, where it is. They seem like a genuinely happy couple of like young people who love each other. It's not like it's not like salacious in any way.
No, and it's not like one of them's pressuring the other. It's not like they're both drunk. It's like they are just they genuinely enjoy each other's company.
She's pregnant.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, like they established that she's pregnant with a couple of lines, which is so weird.
Yeah, that is baffling because it doesn't matter. You don't need that. It doesn't even add like pathos to her at all.
She's not like visibly pregnant.
Yeah.
You know.
Which I assume is probably just a bridge too far for a movie like this.
Even the Friday the 13th movies never got that sleazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then so there's those two, there's the lead girl Chris and her like summer boyfriend Rick, who's like a real flannel wearing like salt of the earth guy, and he really wants sex, and he can only take so many cold showers before his traumatized, possibly raped girlfriend will have sex with him.
Oh my God. Yeah, it was his reaction to her traumatic backstory was like he had none. He just was like, well, that sucked.
Yeah, sorry. And then you have Cheech and Chong.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. Chuck and Chili.
Yeah.
We're a stoner couple who I guess are friends with them. We don't know how they're related to any of these other people.
Yeah, I was very confused as to how any of these people knew each other, aside from Shelley and Andy, who were roommates.
Right, and Vera, I guess, is friends with the girls, and she's brought in as Shelley's date for the weekend. And Vera... I liked Vera. I kind of wish Vera had been the lead.
Yeah.
Mostly because she is so eternally patient with Shelley, even though he is just such a piece of shit. Like, Shelley's like the ultimate incel. He's like one of those guys, it's like, no one's gonna like me for me, so I have to be a jerk and a prankster.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. Beg your pardon. I'm not an asshole. I'm an actor.
Oh, God. What do you have in there? My whole world. Motherfucker brought a hockey mask, a wetsuit, and a spear gun on his weekend with the friends.
I like how every time he does something, like it does a prank, and everyone is just like, what is wrong with you, dude?
Yeah, they're like, you don't have to do this. You don't have to be an asshole. Like, they're all like, I feel like they're all really reaching out to him. Like, Shelley, you don't have to be like that. But then even still, when he tries to make a move on Vera, and she's like, no, I don't think so. Tell you what, I'm going to go for a little walk, and then we'll talk, okay? And he's like, the moment she's out of earshot, bitch.
Yeah, there's never
bitch, I'm going to go put on my wetsuit and spear gun and scare you.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's just, he's like the epitome of the slasher movie character you just want to die. He's just like,
if this is indeed the part 3 that like sets the tone for the genre or sets the tone for the franchise, that's one of your key ones, because the ratio of nice people to Shelleys just it gets way more out of balance. By the time you're in like part 7, everyone is just an asshole that you cannot wait to die, except for maybe like the one lead girl.
Yeah, I mean, and Freddy versus Jason kind of does that too. There are so many characters in that are just like, you're just like, these fucking assholes, just kill them. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
It used to, like, when it starts out, there was an asshole and the prankster, but then they became kind of intertwined.
Right.
And then there'd be like the bitch girl, like the mean girl.
Yeah.
And, she wants the boy as well. It's. Oh my God, I love these movies. They're so just. There's, like I said, there is a purity to them.
Yeah.
Like they're not thinking horror, and they're not trying to be. They never, like, even Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street started from like an intellectual place, and
Right.
these didn't, and I kind of really appreciate that, because this is possibly the most consistent of the slasher franchises.
Yeah, there's no moment, at least in this one and in the others that I've seen, there's no moment where they're like, we have something to say. We have something to say about modern life. It's like, no. This is just a bunch of people in a remote location getting killed, and we're going to make this as cheaply as possible and make as much money as possible, and we're going to do it all in 90 minutes.
And it worked. Honestly, like, I think this was, up until the late 2000s, this was the highest grossing 3D movie of all time.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Now, was
Think of all the work James Cameron had to put in to unseating Friday the 13th Part 3. How hard he had to work and how much innovation he had to do just to unseat Friday the 13th Part 3 as the highest grossing 3D film of all time.
Amazing. Now, do you know, was this a 3D movie that like a thing popped on saying, put your 3D glasses on now, or did you wear them the whole time? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head. And it comes, like, a lot of the Blu-ray versions come with 3D glasses. I tried watching it once, but it's like, it's the old, like, blue and red.
Right.
Like, I don't think so, but I do think when there's that moment in the credits where, like, the Friday the 13th kind of zooms up, and then the Part 3 zooms up and it comes at you even more.
Yeah.
I think that was your cue to put on, to know, okay, now there's, like, 3D shit being thrown at you.
Okay.
But also, I guess I'm forgetting, like, 3D movies back then, if you weren't wearing the glasses, it would look all, like, split.
That's right, yeah.
So, but, yeah, I'm guessing it's when the credits came in, because the old footage was shot, like a real movie.
Right. But, I mean, I just was wondering if, like, when it's Rick, right, who gets his eyeball splattered out at the screen.
Yeah.
I was wondering if when that happens, if there was a thing that was flashing that's like, put your glasses on now, or if you just were wearing them the whole time.
I guess at that point you'd already gotten, like, 3D yo-yos, 3D juggling fruit, 3D joint, 3D pitchfork. By the time you get to, like, weird wax head, like, of Rick popping its eyeball out on a stick at the screen, I don't even know how to describe that effect. It's insane. I'm sure it's
so weird.
It's like someone trying to do, like, a Sam Raimi Evil Dead effect, but they're not Sam Raimi.
Yeah,
So.
well, because then the head squishes in a way. It's clearly like the head can't squish the way they want it to in order for the eyeball to pop out.
Yeah, well, and it's like, and it goes from a shot of his actual head to like the like one of those, like, terrible, like when they show, like, terrible tattoos people get of their of, like, their baby, and the baby looks like Danny DeVito. It was kind of like that, It was like it went from looking like a normal person to looking like Max Headroom if he'd been on drugs for a while.
Yeah, just slightly melted Max Headroom. Oh boy, and the biker gang comes out of, like, fucking nowhere.
No, that's insane. They show up Shelley and Vera go to the, like, local country market, which, like, I worked at a summer camp for many years in the Berkshires, and every little town in, like, rural Massachusetts and New Jersey and upstate New York has, like, that one, like, shop like
Right.
that
Yeah.
where you just stop. And so they go in, and they're immediately accosted by some bikers, and
But not before the
before the
the clerk basically casts racist aspersions on Vera. Like, we don't do food stamps.
which the film then kind of awkwardly affirms, because she immediately asks Shelley for money.
Right.
It's so, like, oh, poor Vera.
Yeah.
Poor Vera. She seems like such a nice person.
Yep, she got stuck with Shelley for a weekend.
Her mom was right to try not to
really-
let her go.
Really was.
Yeah. I noticed in the background of that and the market there was some pretty good vintage 80s comics. You had some Masters of Kung Fu, you had some DC Ghosts, DC Warlord comics were back there.
Oh, yeah.
So some good stuff. I'd never noticed. I don't know. This is the first time I've watched this movie ever and taken notes. And I noticed like the van's got a real cool big Springsteen bumper sticker on the back bumper.
Nice.
So you know it's New Jersey, even though this is the first one they filmed in California.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is why there's no lake. Like the first two were filmed by an actual lake, and in this one they tried to do a man-made lake, and it kept draining. So it's like that's why it's like one little tiny angle on the beach,
Right.
and that's it.
Oh boy, they got that little dock there.
Yeah, they have the dock. The water is clearly about 18 inches deep.
Yep.
Yeah, they made the lake and they built the house for the movie, which is why the house, like some of the doors when Jason's hacking into them, are clearly made of cardboard. But the barn I think existed because they spend a lot of time in that fucking barn.
They do, and so much of just Jason skulking around.
Jason skulking around or just like fucking like angrily digging through shit in the barn,
Right,
trying to find people.
So much they go in the barn. They're like, we're gonna play a prank on Shelly, and then the biker gang shows up. And it's like,
Yeah, Shelly goes in there like, are you guys doing something I shouldn't see? Like thinking he's gonna catch his friends having sex, and that's when he gets killed.
Yeah.
It's go into the barn and you die. That's like that was the whole rinse repeat until the final
until
act,
you
much.
until everything starts happening. But the biker gang really threw me, especially when the guy from the biker gang, the leader of the biker gang, shows up at the end to try and save her.
Ollie, he and it's which I guess is why Jason chose in his case to just bludgeon him in the head as opposed to doing any real like really finish him off. It's just so he can run out at the very end from like a closet and distract Jason long enough to get brutally killed, but it saves Chris. And then she grabs the axe, and it's like, yeah, that's what the movie should have been, was the bikers and like the teens teaming up
to go
fend
against
off Jason. That would have been awesome, because I actually liked the bikers. They actually felt like characters.
And you sort of like it. They're the type of characters that the moment they show up on screen, you sort of instantly know kind of their deal.
Yeah.
And it's like, I was like, oh, this is kind of an interesting complication to add to the mix. It's like, oh, this biker gang is going to, mess things up and Jason's going to be caught in the middle or whatever. No, they just get killed and that's it.
It's to tee up a couple things for the third act to like, they siphon the gas out of the van,
That's right.
and that's why Chris runs out of gas, before going over the rickety bridge that they went over earlier. It really is. This movie's got everything. It's like it has everything that goes into an 80s slasher movie is in this. With the one exception is like there's not a ton of nudity.
No, actually, and I was kind of shocked by that because. Coming to this franchise more sort of knowing its reputation than actually seeing the movies, I was kind of expecting a lot more nudity, honestly. And there really isn't any. There's a
little bit of practically side boob.
Yeah.
And there's not a ton in the first movie either. There's more in the second, and there's more in the fourth, and then the fifth movie was essentially directed by like a porno director. So it's really, that one gets super sleazy.
Yeah, I mean, again, as sort of the reputation of the franchise, I was just expecting this one to be a lot more scuzzier and sleazier, and the characters to be scuzzier and sleazier, but. I mean, for the most part, they all seem like sort of normal people. I mean, Shelley sucks as a person, but like, he's not a complete sleazebag.
No, it's, and it got to that point, like 7 and 8, feel sleazier, but they also feel more sanitized because that was getting into the late 80s and the slasher movies were less of a thing, and the MPAA cracked down on them. So
Right.
like 6, 7, 8 have way less nudity in them, if any, I think, in parts 6 and 7. And then Paramount gave up on the franchise and sent it off to New Line, and that's when they did Jason Goes to Hell: The Final Friday.
Right, which is its own weird thing.
It's the hidden with turns out Jason is just a weird little devil worm that lives inside of other bodies and drives them around. And yeah, and this is before really any trying to explain what Jason's deal is and why
Right.
he won't die, and he's just like a big hulking dude that
Yeah.
goes around killing people.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess my problem, and probably why I never kind of like jumped into the Friday the 13th franchise, is kind of like what we talked about during Halloween, is like kind of like my killers to have a little bit more of a motivation. And I know like he's got his mother and that's like his thing, but it's
You see that, like, you see in the opening of this, the flashback to the other one, like he's got a few like traits to him. He's got a
Right.
few rules. Like, there's a few things you can do to manipulate Jason.
yeah.
But not much. He's just, like, he is a man that lives by the lake, and if you go near the lake, he's probably gonna kill you.
Yeah.
He is even more so, I would say, than Michael Myers. He's the shark.
Yeah.
He's the shark from Jaws.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, I don't have much history with the franchise, but yes, I mean that's the impression that I got here. Anyway, is he's just a menacing thing that comes out and brutally kills people and then leaves and then comes
Yeah.
back, or
Yeah,
you know.
or dies and
Yeah.
then comes back. You know,
Yeah.
it's pretty straightforward. But the problem, I think, to its benefit and detriment, it's so simple that they've only ever really tried to explain it once, and that was in Jason Goes to Hell, and it doesn't make any goddamn sense,
Right.
and it doesn't stick. Like, he's a living, like, hulking mute slasher for the first 4 movies, and then for the rest of them, he's like an undead hulking mute slasher.
Right.
And it's I think the beauty of it is that continuity doesn't really matter all that much. And so you could keep making these forever and ever. And I think it would just come down to a question of, can you make one well
Right.
or not? It's the same story, but it's how effectively you can tell it.
Right. How compelling can you make the characters that are getting killed so that you care? I mean, I remember actually kind of enjoying the remake and thinking that was pretty good.
Yeah, I liked it a lot too. It's they elaborated on Jason just enough to give him
Right.
like a little more, like he's sort of a survivalist. Like
Yeah,
he
yeah,
has
yeah.
that, like, he lives in the old camp and the locals are like, we don't bother him, he doesn't bother us, you know. It's
Yeah.
I think it's like, I've always wanted to, like, I'd say, like, I would love to write a Friday the 13th movie, and what I would do with it is just make it at a working summer camp. Do Jurassic World. They've never actually gotten to the point where they opened the summer camp. And when I worked at Camp Beckett, they have procedures and emergency signals and warnings and procedures for all sorts of stuff, like missing camper,
Right.
lightning storm. Is there some rando on the like camp property? And it's like, what do you do when you get everyone into their cabins and you take a head count and someone's missing? What if someone is missing at the end of like a free swim? There's a whole like route you have to swim under the docks.
Right.
You know, just like put it in the real world terms of, oh shit, there is a fucking murderer living like in the woods nearby, and we've pissed him off enough that he's going to start killing us, you know.
Did you watch the Fear Street movies?
No, I didn't.
On one of them, I think it's the second one, takes place in the past. Does a lot of sort of Friday the 13th stuff. That takes place at a summer camp and is like a working summer camp. It's like the last day of camp when the killer starts killing people. Kind of a similar deal to what you're talking about, but I think it would be really interesting to see it with actual Jason.
Yeah,
Because,
and have the elements of like, he is like a child who loves his mother,
Right.
and like take all the there's not a ton of lore, quote
Right.
unquote, to this franchise, but take all of that and like take what works and just, you know, play the hits but better this time,
Yeah. Did you end up seeing Hellfest? Did you ever see that a couple years ago?
I did. Great idea. I
great
didn't
idea.
love the execution.
Or-
It would have been. It's a great concept.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's a similar thing. Where, I mean, I felt like that movie escaped from the 80s.
Oh yeah, yeah. And that's the thing is they all get kind of shrugged off, but like the ones that work really well. I'd say there's moments in Friday the 13th Part 3 that work really well.
Yeah.
Whenever she sort of sees him, like catches a glimpse of Jason, or when you see Jason sort of stalking from a window or something, he lurks a lot in this one, and I think that's legit creepy on a certain level. He's Jason's properly menacing in this one.
Well, and especially when you have a character who's not entirely certain if she's going insane or not, where she's questioning what she's seeing, if it's her manifestation of her trauma or whatever. That does add a lot to it, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, Steve Miner revisited a lot of these ideas with Halloween H2O much more effectively later on. So I think it's a good idea. I think it's just a failure of execution, and they were completely bogged down by trying to do the movie in 3D.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's that just doesn't work. I mean, it's entertaining on one level, but it doesn't. The movie just looks so bad.
Yeah, it's not boring though. It's
No.
80 minutes. It's a fun watch. All the Friday the 13th movies are a fun watch. They are so dumb, and they're so unabashedly dumb.
Right.
They're never they're never pretentious.
And they're just this one was so easy to watch. Just to sit down and be like, all right, this is it. And then these days, because because I have a toddler and I'm working, I can kind of only watch movies in chunks. So it took me 2 days to watch it, but it was just oh yeah, I'm 45 minutes in. Everyone's gonna get killed tomorrow.
Yeah. And it's all the beats. She's gonna start finding bodies.
Right.
One's gonna pop down from here, one's gonna come out here. It's all the beats. Much like the Universal monsters, this stuff's so baked into the horror genre that you just kind of know it without having seen it.
Right. Or if you have seen it, if you're like me, you sort of came at the horror genre through sort of the more postmodern lens. With Scream, you at least understand all of the tropes pretty much.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. I love the shot with Jason when he gets the axe in his face, though. That must have been so cool in 3D. He gets it in the face, and immediately his arms go up, and he's reaching for you. Freddy versus Jason, they described it as the unstoppable force and the immovable object.
Right.
That movie is better than it has any right to be.
So much better than it has any right to be. That movie is so entertaining. It's shocking that it's that entertaining.
Yeah, it's, and I think that one knew don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
You gave me a book a while ago called Slash of the Titans, and it discusses all the different scripts that were developed for Freddy versus Jason, and some of them just are so elaborate. It was Jason has to collect 13 dream demons.
Right.
It's or there's a warlock named Dominic Necros who resurrects them both. It's no. It's Freddy and Jason, and you smack them together, and that's the movie. As long as you've got a big dude playing Jason and Robert Englund playing Freddy, you're fine.
You're fine. Yeah, and a group of at least semi-likable teenagers.
Yeah.
That movie. It does make sense that you have. I think what did they go through 9 different drafts of that movie in it,
if not more. So many, because it was in development as early as Friday the 13th Part 7, which is the one where Jason fights a telekinetic girl. That was originally gonna be Friday the 13th or Freddy versus Jason, but they couldn't get New Line and Paramount couldn't agree.
Yeah, but so you can understand why a bunch of screenwriters would come at it and just overthink it and think that they're either above the material or that they need to overcomplicate it to add the dream realm into the thing, and it's no. Just make it simple. Just simplify.
It's a really, really easy. It's like it's not hard to get these two in the same room together. You know, it's. And then there were the ones like it was one of them would end with them getting dragged into hell, and then suddenly Pinhead shows up. And it's like they were gonna do like a shared universe after the first one came out. There was talk for like a hot second about doing a sequel where they fight Ash from Evil Dead, but I think Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell wisely were like, no, let's not. That's a comic book. Let's not.
We don't need to deal with the headaches. I mean, there is. I want to peek into the alternate universe where Sam Raimi directs that.
Well, I mean, yeah. If Sam Raimi was going to direct it, that changes the calculus completely.
But no, obviously it probably wouldn't have been that if it had come to pass. But
no, they would have used the another actor as Ash from that period when they were going to remake Evil Dead and bring in a new actor as Ash.
Right.
And all the fans were like, "Don't you dare! Don't you fucking dare!" It's like,
don't do that.
This is that like early 2000s. Like there was a time, lest we not forget, not that long ago, when all of these franchises that have now come back and worn out their welcome again were like, ooh, are they going to come back? Like, are we going to get more Mystery Science Theater 3000? Are we going to get more Evil Dead? Are we going to get more Star Wars? You know?
Yeah.
And all I can think of is when Homer Simpson got sent to hell, and it's, so you like to eat donuts? Yeah, eat all the donuts you can take.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, although I will say I think the Ash vs. Evil Dead was a lot of fun. And I think it also helped having the original creators part of it. Or heading the ship. I think part of the problem with a lot of these franchises that are coming back, and I like some of the sequel Star Wars stuff, the Disney Star Wars stuff, but so much of the franchises as they come back is that they're commenting on themselves.
Yeah.
And they're not like doing anything like new or intriguing with the franchise, and a lot of it just feels like relitigating the premise or relitigating something that was done in the 70s.
Those like the new Halloweens want to sort of comment on the previous movies in the series in a way where it makes it seem like they're a little bit above it all. And the thing I like about none of the Friday the 13th are at all self-aware. And you can't make a self-aware slasher movie because that's a whole fucking franchise. You're never going to do it better than Scream. And even if you don't like Scream, Scream's been done. So it's better to play it straight. Yeah. You know, it's like it's none of these stories, with the exception of maybe like a half dozen slasher movies, none of them have been told so effectively that you couldn't tell the same story again with a new lens.
No, yeah.
You don't have to get self-aware. You don't even have to do like a Last Jedi thing where you like, you know, sort of upend everything.
No.
Not that this franchise has anything resembling a mythology to follow.
No, I mean, I think you're right. And I think it's just, if you were to, you know, whenever they do make a new Friday the 13th, I know that there's like some rights issues or something, which is what's causing them not making one.
Yeah, the rights have been complicated for years because when New Line took over the franchise, they got the rights to Jason Voorhees, but not the rights to the title Friday the 13th because Paramount was making the TV series.
Right.
And ever since then, the waters have been very muddy. So, like, they haven't gotten to 13 movies. The next one that gets made will be the 13th Friday the 13th, which is, like, come on.
Yeah, but what I don't want from something like this, and, you know, this sounds weird, because I don't have a huge affection for the Friday the 13th movies, but what I don't want is something set in the 70s or set in the early 80s.
I don't want Stranger Things.
Yeah, I don't want that, and I don't want a pastiche. I just want sort of a modern version of it, just with like better effects and a little bit better acting and a better screenplay.
Yeah, there's your challenge. How do you do this movie in the modern age when we got phones and stuff? Like, honestly, I want to be able to write it so I can research it, because I'm like, how do summer camps work now? Do you have
Yeah.
like a safe where you've put all the kids' phones so they can actually do summer camp shit all summer?
Yeah, I mean that's actually intriguing and sort of a more interesting way to like deal with the cell phone issue than a lot of horror movies do when they get stuck in the woods. It's like, oh, I have no reception.
Yeah,
You know?
and then like so many of them now are like throwbacks, or
Right.
and
Or they're period pieces. Yeah.
yeah. I'm tired of. I mean, we live in the nostalgia era, at least in terms of movies. I don't need any more throwbacks. They've been making throwback Star Trek now for like almost 10 years, where it's all set in the future's past, and it's I don't think Friday the 13th needs that. I am afraid that's what the next one will be. Like,
Right.
they'll set it in 1981, but I think the beauty of this franchise is that it's so simple that you don't need, like, you can just keep, like I've said, you can just keep telling the same story over and over. This franchise has never had a reboot. Like, apart from the one remake, it never retconned anything. It's never rebooted itself. It is a continuous line of quote-unquote continuity, but it's never been self-conscious enough to be like, we gotta start over, like Halloween's done 4 times and Texas Chainsaw Massacre's done a bunch of times. Oh, we have fun.
We do.
Well, on the subject of having fun or not having fun, Will, I believe next week's your pick.
It is, and actually sort of apropos of our conversation earlier. So, earlier tonight. So, with Multiverse of Madness in the theaters, Sam Raimi's back, made a big budget movie. I think we should do his other part 3 that we haven't talked about, Army of Darkness.
I like it.
An actual good movie.
Yes. Oh my God, that's a treat. Yeah, and so he will join Steve Miner in the podcast part 3, returning repeat offender directors.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes,
So-
Army of Darkness. I love it. So good. The Third Evil Dead. So much fun. It's much like Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, as you described it. If you could crush it up into a powder and snort it, it would give you pure joy.
Yep.
It's so
Yeah.
quotable. It's a gem. It's one of those ones I probably wouldn't need to take notes on it because I have seen it so many times.
Yeah, same here. I mean, we'll get into it, but it's one of those movies that I saw. I saw it spring break of 6th grade, and I saw that and The Frighteners the same weekend.
Ooh, it's a good double feature.
And I think both movies rewired my brain on like a permanent level. And it was like the same year that I had like gotten really into Monty Python and Mystery Science Theater. So it was like my like a lot of the stuff that I love like really codified there. So
Yeah, but so yeah, Friday the 13th part 3. It's not good, but it is great.
yeah, I think that's accurate.
Yeah, like I'd say
Certainly
like
accurate.
like is it an essential part of the franchise? I'd say absolutely. It's doubling down on everything that made the first 2 successful, and it adds a couple of key elements. It's like they finally like figured out how to make the killer iconic,
Right?
and after that it was it was off to the races for like nonstop. I think it was like they did part 4, the final chapter, realized that wasn't gonna stick, made a new beginning, Jason Lives, New Blood, then he took Manhattan, then he was
Then
a
he
devil.
went to hell.
Then he was a devil worm. Then he went to space, which if you want to talk about, if we ever do part 10, the part 10 podcast, that movie is. We went on a bachelor weekend to Austin a couple of years ago, and I feel like on there's a lot of like film guys, like intellectual film guys, and I feel like that whole weekend, and our buddy Daniel, who was getting married, said like, bring some bad movies, Sam. I want to watch some bad. We're gonna get drunk. We're gonna watch some bad movies like we do. And I was like, I got you, buddy. I got you. And they were talking about like classic films and foreign films. They were talking about like City of God and all weekend, and I was just like, I'm gonna break their brains.
And you did.
Yep.
You did with Jason X of all things.
Because I don't think if you only watch the greatest movies ever made, you don't truly understand all the nuances of filmmaking, in my opinion. You have to watch the bad movies. You have to watch the dumb blockbusters. You have to watch the slasher movies, and you have to watch like the Plan 9s and the Rooms and the Gymkata's, and just so like just it's like if you only know of genius, it's impossible to conceive of how something so stupid could come to pass.
Well, and also, I mean, it's one of those things, especially because we were not to call anyone out, but it was a lot of people who are in the business, and it's like no one tries to make a bad movie. Remember this?
Yeah, that's
like,
the
no
thing.
one sets out to make a bad movie.
But it is like, the most famous bad movie podcast is called How Did This Get Made? You know? And that is the question we ask ourselves. But what I'm so proud of is that our buddy who was on that trip, who was like definitely the most like he was like a real like cinephile, and he's very smart, and he knows film up backwards and forwards and up and down like I do. After that, he's always asking me, I want to watch more bad movies.
Yeah.
What are some bad movies? And I was like, oh, you got to check out, Get Even. You got to check out Miami Connection. It's like, it's such a wonderful world of schlock and cheese that I think is just a great insight into filmmaking.
Well, and even like the like Miami Connection is a perfect example because it's a terrible movie, but like it is so bananas and strange that like when you get people who don't know how to make a movie, they don't follow any rules, and they're just like, we're just gonna do whatever comes to mind.
It's not cynical. Miami Connection's a passion project. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like Friday the 13th Part 3 is like, Son of Frankenstein or the Universal Monsters, and that's like just we're gonna crank these out, and occasionally one's gonna be a gem, and occasionally one's gonna be breathtakingly bad, but like the truly great bad movies are the person making them believes in what they're doing.
Exactly.
They just don't know how to do it at all. So that's when you get The Room.
Right,
that's when you
right.
get Miami Connection. That's when you get Roar.
Or Manos: The Hands of Fate.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I believe, though, with Manos: The Hands of Fate, he had bet screenwriter Sterling Siliphant that he could make
right.
a movie, and they wrote a contract on a napkin.
That's right, yeah.
And while Sterling Siliphant went off to win an Oscar for In the Heat of the Night, that guy, Hal Warren, went and made Manos: The Hands of Fate.
Yeah.
The best film class you and I ever took, in my opinion, was Bad Films. And it was this professor who was doing film theory through the lens of bad movie making. We watched Pink Flamingos. We watched Doris Wishman movies. We watched the acting in porn, but not the porn. And breathe deep, people. If you've never seen something and you're curious, but people tell you it's bad, watch it anyway.
Yeah, give it a shot. Yeah, I mean, and a lot of what that bad films class, a lot of the movies we watched were not actually bad.
No.
Because a lot of them were just like cult movies.
Yeah,
they weren't,
Pink Flamingos isn't a bad movie. It's a filthy movie.
It's a very dirty one. But...
That's a movie where they made exactly what they set out to make. Same as like with like Little Shop of Horrors, the original like Roger Corman stuff, Bucket of Blood.
Yeah.
It's watching art through adversity. It's watching filmmakers with very limited resources try to execute their vision.
Right.
And, it's fascinating. I really think so. And I don't think necessarily Friday the 13th Part 3 is worthy of this conversation we're having right now, but
No.
It is one of the gateways I had into these type of movies.
Yeah,
like watching, a buddy of mine loaned me, I used to see the Friday the 13th VHS tapes in the video store, and they seemed so like forbidden. And a friend of mine loaned me his like the first 5 on VHS, and I watched them all on my birthday once. And, and I'm hooked ever since, and it led me to discover, that's led me to Halloween and American Werewolf in London and Evil Dead and even dumber shit than that.
It's like you're an archaeologist in a way. You're sort of digging through layers of stuff.
Yeah, And it was also like you and I are kind of the last generation of people that did that without the internet,
right?
Like really guiding us. So it was like literally it would be like I'd go to the video store and they were like, if you like that, you should watch this, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, and I remember using IMDb at the time, not really like to recommendations so much as like I'd look up Sam Raimi and be like, oh, he directed these other movies.
Yeah, it was like a reference. There was no social media to speak of. There were like fan websites where you could like look up, the deleted scenes from Alien or something.
Right,
You know,
yeah.
it's and like we were just this is also like right before DVDs come out, so
Yeah.
there's not as much insight into the making of these movies.
Yeah.
And I had the big like I think I had like the Video Hounds movie guide. One
Oh,
of the
yeah.
real big, thick, like Leonard Maltin style video
the phone
guides.
book
Yeah,
ones,
bigger
yeah.
than a phone book. Like you could kill someone with this thing. And so you could go through that and just find like what gets 5 stars, what gets 0 stars,
Right.
and, you know, go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, I haven't thought about the Video Hounds books in a long time. I had one of those too.
Leonard Maltin had his book, and Roger Ebert, I think, had a book. And
Yeah.
we had one that HBO put out for a lot of years, and then we finally had to like update it, you know, because it was from 1990, and we got one in 1998, and that was Video Hound. And
Yeah, the Video Hound ones I remember actually had a lot more like culty and weird movies.
it was more in depth. It felt like it was
Yeah.
bridging the gap between Leonard Maltin and the Psychotronic video guide.
Yeah. Yeah, the Psychotronic video guide I only ever looked at in like a library. I never had that on my own.
No,
but, yeah.
at Hampshire, one of our friends had it.
That's
I
right.
think Alicia
That's
had
right.
it.
Alicia had it.
Yeah, and she would like highlight all the stuff she'd seen, you know, because she was a font of these movies
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, I think you never know what movie is going to be your gateway into like completely upending and expanding your horizons for what you like and what interests you and what makes you want to get into the art as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And we'll definitely get into that next week because I think both you and I look to the Evil Dead movies as like certainly when we were in college they were a huge inspiration for how we were
Yeah.
making stuff.
Yeah, and Sam Raimi in general, and just sort of his aesthetic and tonal thing, and how he jumps from camp to seriousness to like slapstick comedy to, you know, to horror. Just you know,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
anyway.
But yeah. So yeah. Will, any final thoughts on Friday the 13th Part 3?
Well, Sam, I'm not an asshole. I'm an actor.
Shelley's dead. Oh, there's a real gamut of performances in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you all for listening. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Podcast Part 3. New episodes drop Friday, and after Army of Darkness, we got something special planned because we're coming up on our 20th episode. We got something special. It's been a long time coming.
Yep, it's gonna be big, and we'll talk about it next week.
Yeah, insert very distinct maniacal laugh here. Good. All right, Will, until next time, always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
Have a great night, folks.